Hey everybody, I'm John Granato. You can listen to me mornings on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, and that's Josh Jordan. You can hear him Sunday mornings talking about money line and how you can win money. And he's also the editor of SportsMapHouston.com. Hey Josh, this week Carlos Correa signed with Scott Boras. Good or bad sign for our Astros?
I'm kind of on the fence here, but I think ultimately it's going to be up to Carlos, but I think the Astros are going to have to pay more if they want to keep Carlos. So I think it's a bad sign as far as how big this contract's going to be because, Boras did the Seager deal. We know that one was over $300 million. He knows the shortstop market probably better than anybody because he just went through all this. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Carlos to add him. But at the same time, we've seen Boras do some team-friendly deals for Altuve and Lance McCullers. I know McCullers, a little bit of injury mixed in there, probably why he didn't get more. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Boras gets their clients what they want. So it depends on what Carlos truly wants.
I've got a little insight in this. It's a bad thing because he's going to get the top dollar mega deal. Scott Boras isn't talking about $300 million. Scott Boras is talking about $400 million with Carlos Correa. So it is going to be so ridiculous that the Astros are not going to be able to get this job done. But there's a little sliver of hope. I got a sliver of hope. And one of the reasons is in this soundbite that Mark Berman got with Scott Boras, there might be something in there that will give us a little bit of a hint on Carlos Correa possibly sticking with the Astros.
Well, the Astros, when you look at them, they have 3 or 4 young pitchers, but they also have 6 potential great position players who are all relatively young. It's an organization that's been at the championship level of play for 3 or 4 years, and yet that can continue for 6 or 7 if they're able to retain those true core pieces of all-star level talent that they already possess.
All right, Josh. So the Astros are going to they've been good for 5 years. They've been good because they've been in the World Series 3 of the last 5 years. But he says, they could be good for 6 or 7 instead of 4 years, 3 or 4 years. And then he says they could be good for 6 or 7. Does that mean that maybe Carlos will sign a short-term deal? And I'll tell you why that's a possibility. Because one of the first things that Scott Boras told Carlos Correa is how excited he is about Carlos getting to free agency at the age of 27. If Carlos went to free agency again next year, he would still be a 28-year-old and still be the youngest, really, really good top-of-the-line free agent out there. Even if he did a 2-year deal, he's still in his 20s, and he is still going to get a big long-term deal, even if he signs a 2-year deal. I think that is really a possibility here, that the Astros could up for more than the average that he would get on a long-term deal, let's say $70 million, or even $75 million for 2 years, and then Carlos could hit free agency at 29 and still get a nice 7 or 8 year deal where he could get to $300 million. I think it's a possibility.
Cool. I hope you're right, John. To me, I think a lot of this is about pride for Carlos. If he's not going to get that 10-year, $300 million deal, then I think he has to get the most per year. So I don't feel like you hire Scott Boras to get a 2 or 3 year deal. To me, I feel like Carlos wants something bigger. Like I would think like 7 years at $245 might get it done in Carlos's point of view, $35 a year over those 7 years. I know that's a ton of money, but look, I hope you're right. But I don't know if I hire Scott Boras to do a 2-year deal and then hit free agency again. I don't know. Carlos loved that Lindor deal. I feel like he wants something like that.
Hey, no question. No. Hey, listen, the Tigers offered him $275 million. He ain't doing that. It started at $330. That report just came out as well that Carlos wanted $330 to $350 if he was going to sign a long-term deal with somebody. He ain't taking $245. He's just not doing $245 because he gets out at free agency after 7 years. He's not going to get the other $55 million in free agency after that. So he's going to want either a really long-term deal, which, by the way, might not be out there. No one bit on anything over 300 for Carlos Correa so far. Do we know that after the lockout, with a shorter time to negotiate, that somebody's going to step up? The Cubs, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, that they're going to step up and give 330 to 350 million? We don't know that. He might have to take a shorter term deal with more money guaranteed and more a higher per annum, but he might have to do that because there isn't that long term deal out there.
And that all makes sense to me. I really wonder if he's going to want to prove himself again. But I do feel like the lockout maybe works in our favor here. Maybe there's not as much time, to get a deal done before the season starts. And maybe Correa's like, all right, well, let's hit this again because and it's an excuse, right? Like, why didn't you get that long-term deal? Well, we had the lockout and it screwed up negotiations and it slowed everything down. And then it was a short preseason, short spring training. We had to jump into the year. So I could see that working in the Astros' favor. But once again, it's going to come down to Carlos. Does he really, want to stay with the Astros like McCullers and Altuve did? It's going to come down to that.
Well, I'll tell you this. Carlos ain't afraid of proving himself. He did that this year. He bet on himself and he won. He could have taken less money and a longer-term deal, guaranteed money, but he said, no, I'm going after that big deal. And by the way, one of the biggest reasons that people don't want to give him a 10-year deal is because he's been injury prone. If he plays 2 more years here under a 2-year deal, big deal, he can prove that he was healthy for 3.5 years now because he had the COVID year that he was healthy. He was healthy last year. If he plays 2 more years, that's 3.5 years now of being healthy that Carlos Correa can say, I'm not injury prone. You can see I've been playing and I will continue to play.
That's interesting. The sticking point with the Astros, like we've talked about, is going to 6 or 7 years. So if he really wants to stay in Houston, I'd be surprised that he turned down $245 over 7. That Detroit deal was much longer than that. It was a longer contract at less money per year. So, and we have to look at the comments from Boras. I know we kind of looked at these differently. When he said they could be good another 6 or 7 years, I'm thinking 6 or 7 more years starting from right now, whereas you interpret it as, 6 or 7 years in the totality of the Astros window.
Yeah, no, I know for a fact he ain't signing a 7-year. He's not doing a 7-year. He's not doing a 6 or 7 year deal, even for more money, because he's going to get out of free agency in his mid-30s, and you're not getting another big deal then. Carlos is going for it all, or I hope just that 2-year deal.